Couple of stories that have been in the news, not that far apart, a couple of weeks apart. First, Volkswagen announcing it's laying off thousands of workers, shuttering a couple of plants in Germany. Nissan following just a few days later, announcing a 20% cut in production, and they're laying off 9,000 workers, all because car sales are bottoming. And it's happening in two of the biggest markets in the world, China and the U.S. So you look at that and you think to yourself, okay, what does that mean for me if I'm in the market? And it would seem that it would mean now is an excellent time to consider buying a new car. And obviously, beyond just a new car, if you're in the market for an EV, even though they're a bit more expensive, consider too that some of the incentives built into those cars were going to be disappearing anyway. Michael Bettencourt is an EV tech and auto journalist, member of the Automotive Journalists Association of Canada, and on the line. Michael, thanks for being here. Let me begin by asking, okay, so it seems to me we go through boom and bust cycles in this car business, right? When it's very expensive, and now all of a sudden, and I was speaking to someone who actually, is at a dealership and basically saying the same thing. They're clearing new cars out of the showroom. So why is this the time to buy? And is it only because we're seeing sort of a bust cycle right now?
Well, no, I think it's more than that. It's really, there's been a lot of trepidation in the market in general when it comes to, two things really. One, high interest rates, and two, car prices in general have been up quite a bit over the last few years. That was due to COVID as well as due to shortages of various parts. And so those prices haven't come down as quickly as we've seen in other markets. So really, the incentives that we're starting to see now are a combination of, wait a minute, OEMs are starting to see people want to get back into the market, but they're seeing the higher prices. So they're saying, we have to adjust for that. And plus, at the end of calendar years, normally, there do tend to be more deals in general.
Yeah, I get the end of the calendar year, right? We've always been accustomed to that. The new models come in, so obviously it's the old. We have to clear the old ones off the floor. That's not new. Is this situation this year different from that?
Yeah, it's actually very different, especially if you're in the market for an EV. When you consider that in Quebec, they're going to be chopping the EV incentive from $7,000 to $4,000 at the beginning of January. So there's going to be a lot of people in Quebec, especially who are going to be shopping over the next 6 weeks that really want to get in under that deadline. And keep in mind as well, the overall federal incentive, that's another $5,000 that Quebec motorists can get. That program is set right now to end March 31st, 2025, but it will end if people oversubscribe to the company. So that's the March 31st date is the hard date, but if they run out of funds sooner, then you're looking at a potential total of an extra $8,000 that Quebec motorists can get if they buy before January 1st.
Now, maybe I'm a cynic here. As I hear you say that, I think to myself, okay, car dealers are pretty smart, or car manufacturers are pretty smart. Those incentives disappear. I'm having a feeling that some of those list prices get sort of taken down anyway because they don't want to lose that business to begin with. Is that wrong to think that?
No, I mean, it's true that you never know what direction prices are going to be in. But you're right that if manufacturers see that the loss of these incentives is really hurting sales, there is a good possibility that they may come back, but there's also a possibility that they won't. I mean, here in Ontario, we got our provincial incentive chopped right away, and so we saw a little bit of reductions from manufacturers, but certainly not the total amount. We didn't get all the money back that the government was offering, that's for sure.
So how much of this has to do with, maybe I'm wrong here, are EV sales slowing in general, or are they picking up? I'm not sure who to believe when I read stuff these days.
So, yeah, I mean, it's definitely confusing. So for sure, it depends on the area where you're looking at. Overall, Canadian sales are actually doing very well this year. And EV sales, in particular in Quebec, are doing extremely well. Now, people in Quebec are pretty smart, so they realize, okay, listen, the EV incentives are going away in total by December 31st, 2026. So they know if they buy before the end of this year, or they should know, hopefully, if they do their homework, if they buy by the end of this year, they'll still have their full $7,000 incentive. If they don't, then they'll get $4,000 beginning next year. And if they don't by the end of 26, then they won't get anything for at least from a government perspective, unless things change, which is always a possibility. But right now, those are the figures and how they're set to reduce over time.
So when I said off the top, we've seen a couple of major companies, so Volkswagen and Nissan, two big companies, cut jobs, close plants. What's the rationale there? Are sales slowing? I mentioned two of the biggest markets, China and the U.S., but globally, are we seeing new car sales sort of stall?
So globally, for sure, where you're seeing a lot of the pain points really does come down to China. I mean, China is so far and away the biggest market in the world that the fact that the North American brands, not even North American brands, but brands that would be familiar to folks in North America, meaning non-Chinese brands, because those sales of all those companies are down so much in China, you're seeing global repercussions. Plants closing, incentives increasing, other parts of the world, and that includes here in Canada and in the U.S. especially.
So I wanted to ask one other question, which is there's been obviously a lot made. The U.S. started it, but Canada followed suit about Chinese EVs, and that's become a bigger and bigger part of the industry there. And, of course, They get the manufacturers there for a fraction of what it costs to build here. So we have these tariffs supposedly taking effect. What do you know about Chinese EVs coming into, let's say, the Canadian market? Will it happen?
Well, right now we've instituted the same tariffs as the U.S. has, which is 100%. Right now, whether or not that'll change in the U.S., they will arrive at some point. I mean, the Chinese manufacturers are just so large, and at some point they will arrive, I believe. It's not imminent right now, but who knows? Who knows when it'll happen? But it seems pretty clear, and everyone in the industry realizes that they will arrive in North America at some point.
Could I have bought, if I wanted to, could I have bought a Chinese EV if I knew the car existed and brought it into Canada at my own expense if I wanted to? Or was that illegal?
Well, actually, there are a couple of Chinese-built vehicles that are on sale in Canada right now. You can buy a Volvo EX30 that came. So they sort of got around it in a bit of a loophole. They brought in their Chinese-built vehicles before October 1st, which is when the tariff came in. So if you happen to go to a dealer, you can still get your rebate on a Volvo EX30. And that's not the only vehicle. I just, pulling that one up because it's kind of one of the latest and greatest. And
yeah, but I'm guessing even though it's manufactured in China, it's not a Chinese EV, right? It's a Volvo car happened to be manufactured in China. So the price is not going to be ridiculously low. It'll still be whatever you pay for a Volvo, wouldn't it?
Right, exactly. And to answer your question, no, you won't be able to import a vehicle from China, although lots of people will be looking into ways, but no, right now it's not possible.
Okay. So look, the other issue I guess I will always bring up is used cars, because we seem to have gone through a couple of very strange cycles with used cars. Obviously, during COVID, that was one thing. Now, years later, I thought there was a dearth of these cars. Now there isn't. Where are we on used cars? Are people buying them, or are we opting for new cars? How's that playing out?
Well, for sure, people are looking more at used cars as they're seeing the new car prices so high. So keep in mind that when people see both the highest interest rates and the high prices for new cars, I mean, there's a lot of sticker shock there.
Yeah.
So when that happens, naturally they'll go and look at used cars. But from an overall perspective and from a used EV perspective, I mean, regular used vehicles have become a relatively better deal than they have on the new car front, and especially on the EV used car market, because you still get the rebate on those used EVs. And for sure, there's some value there that people should look for.
Is there a shortage of EVs in the market right now from what you see? I'm sorry, not of EVs, of used cars?
So I wouldn't say a shortage.
Okay.
The question is, how much have they gone down in price relative to
new cars,
the spike they saw over COVID days?
Oh, okay.
So they're out there. It's just how the used car prices are coming down, but and certainly more so than the new cars. But the used cars have always really been where a lot of value is for most buyers. The used car sales numbers are always much, much higher than new car sales.
So last question, if you were in the market, would you actually go to buy a used EV, or is that a bad idea, investment?
Right now, if I was in the province of Quebec, I'd look very closely at taking advantage of the new vehicle rebates that are available for now. But I'd also look at some used EVs. There's also that used EV rebate that I mentioned in Quebec. Quebec's the only province that I know there's East Coast has a couple of used EV rebates. But I would say look at what's available in the market from the government, and also look at the comparison for a regular used car, a hybrid, and then go from there. See what your best deal is.
And just no concern about you buy an EV that's, I don't know, a few years old, but the battery and the fact you'll ultimately have to replace it, is that not a consideration? Should it be?
No, I don't think that's a consideration at all. Batteries are warranted for at least 8 years, often 160,000 kilometers. And when you look at the long-term statistics, there have been EVs on the market really now for 12 years. And when you look at those 12-year-old vehicles, they've lost maybe 10, 15%. Obviously, it depends on how much you've driven it and so forth. But there's really no long-term concerns there.
All right. Michael, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Michael Bettencourt, there you go, auto tech journalist.